What tools have you found, whether it's email or chat or whatever, video chat, email, to communicate with your clients or with your team and not lose the emotion? Because as we all know, you've all gotten that email or that text, and because it might have had caps on or something, you're like, why are they yelling at me or something? And there's so much lost in that face-to-face. What kind of technology have you been using to let your clients or your teammates really sense your emotion? Because that's why we're all here, right?
Mm-hmm. Before I answer the question, you know when you go to a restaurant and you're so impressed by the person who takes your order and doesn't write anything down? I feel that way about you right now. Those intros were really good. So that was amazing that you just did that.
It's from his head.
Yeah, I'm like, wow. So I have found that in person or any form of video is better than the phone. I really dread the phone. I'll do it if I have to, but any opportunity, particularly if I'm working with someone for more than a few minutes, if it's more than like an intro call, I almost always require Skype or some kind of video. I need to see your face. I need to see your facial expressions, because a lot of how I react, a lot of what I learn about you as a person, that unfortunately if I don't have the privilege of being face-to-face with you, then I at least need Skype or FaceTime, some kind of opportunity to see your face. And on the receiving end of that, if you're working as a strategist, a consultant, or someone that's getting paid to listen, it's in your best interest to be able to see that person. I think sometimes people can get mean on the phone. They won't get mean if you can see them face to face, just like how it would be in person. So I've always found if video is an option, I always go that route.
And I would say, Phil, you're definitely talking from the perspective of working with people maybe on the start of a new relationship, right? Where Chance, you might be communicating with people that you've already been around for a while that might know you already, right?
Yeah, so roughly like 7 or 8 months ago, I started a new company, Doghead Simulations, and we're actually developing VR conferencing and collaboration software. So I actually spend hours every week in virtual reality with everyone from work, and we're having meetings in actual three-dimensional space like it's real life.
Wow.
So something that is we've been able to, you know, we use Google Hangouts as well, which is kind of Google is our main suite, but as far as like all of our meetings are in VR. So something we get over like Skype Hangouts instead of VR is social presence, right? So with the HTC Vive, we're tracking your head and your hands, and so when I talk to someone, I'm getting actual body language. And so because you have that stereoscopic 3D space, you can move around, you actually feel like someone there is present with you.
Right.
In a level that you don't get in video, you know, because you naturally tend to stand in a circle when you're talking with people. You can't do that in Skype. There's no circle.
Certainly.
You're not working within any space. And so we're basically replicating real life meetings within virtual reality.
That is the wave of the future, wouldn't you think?
I hope so. I know it's a big idea. We just have to be the one to execute it correctly.
Me too. Well, so Leon, you had an interesting career so far when it put you out traveling, having to keep in touch with headquarters, but now you're at headquarters wanting to keep in touch with other people, right?
Yeah, I mean, after I saw electricity get invented, from my perspective, I've been able to see the whole development of communication go almost full circle. And what I mean by that is, back in the earlier times of communicating with employees or people in general, it was either a phone or in person. In person was always a good thing, because I think Phil brings up a good point. Having that communication face-to-face, is great. But now that the world's moving a little quicker, we have electricity.
I love this guy.
So we're cruising right along. So now we have social media, we have all these options, and the written word can be misinterpreted a lot. I think in communicating, from my point of view, it depends on the situation at hand. If I'm talking to a client and it's a very, it's an important topic that you have to get across a point, you really would love to do it in person. An email isn't effective. A text isn't a good idea. That's not very personable. And when I'm dealing with our road staff people out on the road and they're really going quick and moving, then the text works for me and them, because they go right to me. Hey, do you want me to go to gate 21 and go to Boston, or am I going home? You figure that out real quick. And then, so, so we have to communicate like this. So I think you have to qualify the type of communication you're looking at. But in general, things that require some emotional discussion, or the importance of the topic is more than just an assignment maybe, or well, that could be important, but a particular fact. If it involves more than that, you want to try to have face-to-face. The way I keep up with our road staff people is I go to as many shows in Dallas where I live that a lot of our tours come through. So I'll that's how I keep up with people. And then I'll visit the offices, and I tend to be around the offices when we're the busiest, and I know that there's people around. So I need that FaceTime with people. It's very important.
So, Michael, you've got an interesting little thing, because everybody's used to security guys being the non-personable ones, right? But you've got to win over clients to prove that you're the guy to make sure that they're nice and secure, right?
Yeah, so I think everybody's kind of touched on it, the FaceTime, Google Hangouts, all of that's kind of important. So I'll come at this communication from a different perspective of one thing when I switched to being a full-time remote worker that I really learned about doing it is, from a communication perspective, a lot of things will always get taken out of context. So there's never such a thing as over-communication.
Right.
So whenever I'm having to convey something through email or through text or through a Slack channel or whatever messaging medium that you use, I'm always going to over-communicate to the point where it seems like it's annoying. Like, oh my gosh, like you're walking to the shower right now. Like, do you really need to tell somebody that? But that's important because somebody gets your sense of text. So a lot of things get taken out of context, and at least then they know like you're joking around, because that stuff gets lost from face-to-face conversations. So it's really important to know how to over-communicate, and communication's hard in general. But the more you get used to over-communicating and conveying everything, the easier it becomes. And then you realize it bleeds into everything else you do. So then you over-communicate to everybody else, and they love you for all of the over-communication that you tell them most of the time.